Hello, and today I'd like to talk about a couple of things. First, I'd like to go through my summary of all the things that sold in retail back in August. Normally I've been doing a summary at the end of every month, but obviously I've been a bit distracted this month playing Classic, and this video has taken a little while to come out. And the second thing is actually Classic itself. I'd like to talk about that and my thoughts on it and what I've enjoyed about it, what I think has made it successful so far, and where I think we should go moving on from here. So first off, let's have a quick look at my accounts from August and just have a look at what has been selling in retail before Classic got launched. So as always, I split this into all my different professions that I've got going on. So I'll run through this fairly quickly. So for tailoring, we had a fair amount of various transmog bits of pieces here. We've got some black mage weave, blue linen shirts, overalls, a spell thread there, cindercloth pants, they did very well at 4,400. Death Silk shoulders, that's from the Waste of Time achievement. So it looks like people have been doing various bits and pieces in BFA before Classic got released. Fair amount of Hexweave bags there. We've actually had some really nice sales of Notorious Combatant gear. Initially I wasn't getting many sales of this at all, but there do seem to be a few at reasonable prices as well. We've even got some pants there at 11,000 gold. So for tailoring, that's done very well, all things considered. A few more robes, shirts, the usual bits and pieces, giving me a grand total of tailoring sales of 137,000 gold in August. Now, I haven't really spent a lot, I don't think, on tailoring, and you can see here, yes, we've got only 11,000 in Shelderai silk and 4,000 in gilded seaweave to do the Notorious gear, giving me a very reasonable profit of tailoring of 119,000. So all in all, tailoring has done very well for this month. The mix of Notorious gear and the regular shirts and bits and pieces certainly have helped, and I haven't really spent a lot either, which doubly helps. So moving on to cooking. Cooking has always been a bit hit and miss for me. I always end up spending more on materials than I do on the actual sales of the cooking. So again, we've had some sales here at Bountiful Captain's Feast, 28,000. And we've also been doing quite well with the new meals as well. McDowell's Big Mac has done well. I sold 380 of those at 11,000 total. And then 245 for the biltong for 5,500, giving me a grand total in sales of 62,000 for cooking. But I believe I've actually spent a fair amount as well. Again, I've spent far too much on Redtail Loach. That seems to be my bugbear at the moment. Frenzied Fangtooth, again, we've spent a fair amount on. So my actual expenditure for cooking is actually coming out at 61,000, which, when you look at that, actually only gives us a cooking profit of 833 gold. Hardly worth it at all when you look at those figures. But the thing to bear in mind with this is I will have some leftover stock, so there's always kind of like a rolling stock that I can use the next month. So as we saw with the tailoring, if I have a month where I don't actually buy too many materials, I may be able to take that excess stock and turn it into a profit. Here's hoping anyway. So overall, cooking is breaking even. So let's move on to leatherworking, which has a few bits and pieces, nothing massive. Again, leatherworking I haven't really focused on. We have had a few coarse leather bits and pieces, so people with a fresh 110 will buy these, and I've had some good sales there. Coarse leather barding's been quite nice at 12 at 3,000. And shimmer scale diving suit for the turn-in, 12 of those for 10,000. And then we have a couple of bits of Notorious gear. Now I didn't really get started on the Notorious gear for leatherworking until much later in the month, so I don't think this is fully representative of the sales of Notorious gear. I think we'll get more and more of those as time goes on. It does give me a grand total of 43,000 for leatherworking. Now if we move on to my expenditures, we actually have quite a lot of expenditures here, 78,000, and a lot of that is in this dredged leather here. So this is going back to the Notorious gear. I bought up a fair amount of dredged leather in anticipation of me making more Notorious gear, but we haven't resulted in sales this month. But I do know that we have had some sales already in September, so we should see some of that profit coming through next month. So even overall, this is a loss of 34,000. My excess stock here I'm sure will help me for the future. So moving on, usually my best seller, enchanting. Let's have a look at this. We've again got a fair mix of sales here. Binding of Intellect done very well there, and Binding of Strength. These are Legion enchants, and with an average there of 9,000 for Binding of Strength and 5,000 of Intellect, that's even better from Legion times. I guess I've kind of got a niche in the market there. And then we also the big sellers, Accords of Critical Strike and Accords of Haste, 157 and 177,000 of those. Deadly Navigation has been doing very well. Force Multiplier as well, 149,000. Machinist Brilliance, 108,000. So these are all the good sellers. Enchanting has done again very well this month. If we look at the total here, we have 1,143,000 in sales on Enchanting, which is really nice to see. Even got Slight Step hoof plates in there. 6 of those for 10,000. That's quite nice. Now, of course, we will have a lot of expenditure because any Tide Spray and leather I'm including in the price here. So coarse leather, 91,000 there. And I'm sure there's a few resets of the market. Accords of Haste we spent 64,000 on. Accord of Critical Strike, 11,000 on. And then I've actually reset the market quite a lot on these weapon enchants. I bought a fair amount there. That's going to take a hit on my profits. And then moving on, Gloom Dust. I've actually been buying Gloom Dust rather than using it in my Bracer Super Shuffle because it's actually a lot more easy and convenient for me to do it this way. But then Nylon Thread, 14,000 of that. And here's the big one, Tides Braid Linen, 263,000 we spent on that, giving us a grand total of expenditure of 650,000, which means our enchanting profit is just under 500,000 on enchanting alone, so 493,000. So as a profession on its own, enchanting is doing very well. Now, some other professions, like tailoring, have helped support this, but as we had a loss on our leatherworking, we're also going to have another loss, I think, in alchemy. Let's have a look at this. So with my alchemy, I have been spending a lot of money in leveling up my alchemy. Now, I didn't really do this as efficiently as I could have done for the purposes of just getting it up to speed as quickly as I could, but I've had some sales. Greater Flask of the Endless Fathoms is starting to come through. Greater Flask of the Currents is coming through now. I'm also including here the transmutes that my other alchemist El Morte does. Living Steel here, 30,000 of sales there. River's Heart, Primordial Rubies, things for the Panthers, those are doing quite well. And then some potions here, Superior Potion of Agility, Intellect, Strength. So we're starting to get some sales coming through with the Silas Proc on our alchemy. But it has taken a while, and it also has taken a fair hit on my profits. So even though we've got 204,000 here, when we have a look at my expenditure, this is where we can see some big numbers. Anchorweed I've spent 56,000 on. Akunda's Bite at 12,000. And then, I believe Zenithid, yeah, 226,000 we spent on Zenithid. Simply because I needed the volumes to get myself started. Now that means my grand total of expenditure is actually 342,000, which means I've lost 138,000 on alchemy. Now I do have a reasonable stock of this now, so as time goes on, I'm sure those potions will sell, and then I can start clawing back this money that we invested initially on alchemy. It's one of those professions, it seems, you do need to invest a fair amount to get started, but then once you've got it rolling, it should be fine. So then, moving on to my miscellaneous section, very little I've spent on this. A couple of contracts, Leviathan's Eye of Intellect, that was a minor equipment upgrade. I haven't had any sales of anything transmog-wise recorded at all, so we're actually at a minor loss of the miscellaneous by 865 gold. So what does that mean for our grand total for the month? Well, we're looking at 440,000. That's pretty much enchanting on its own if I discarded the other professions. The tailoring and a little bit of excess from enchanting have helped equalise out the leatherworking and alchemy investments we've made this month. So hopefully those two professions will help out with next month, but obviously the markets have changed drastically since Classic has come out. I've already noticed, and we're only halfway through the month, that a lot of my sales in retail have drastically been reduced. Now this is in part my own fault, because I've only really been going on relisting things, letting them expire, not doing any massive restocks or cancel scans. So it's in part my own input as reflected on what my output's going to be in September, but we'll have a look at that next month and see how things have affected since the launch of Classic. So talking about Classic, well, we've got Samadan here, who is level 14 and I must admit I've been having a whale of a time with Classic so far since it's been released. I certainly didn't expect to be as hooked as I am now. I never bothered with the beta, even though I had access. There was too much I wanted to do in BFA. Yet here I am, spending most of my time playing Classic, and we're already up to level 14. The interesting thing with both games is, for me, it's all about the goals. Goals provide focus and motivation towards the next achievement. With Retail, that was like the Brutosaur mount for a long time for me. Then it was getting flying, then more professions, and ultimately more gold to pay for my sub, and then aim for gold cap eventually. So why has Classic captured my interest so much? Well, the goals are many and tangible. The first goal is pretty clear, getting to 60, and that can easily be broken down into sub-steps. Before that you've got to get 40, and with that comes the mount, and therefore you've got the goal of getting 100 gold to be able to afford your first mount. And before that, every level has a target and an achievement in itself, and it feels like each level is a significant progression of your character. And for me, I think this is where the magic happens in Classic, and I think why it has recaptured the imagination of so many other people. With Classic, you can't just steamroll through without considering the very real and tangible risk of death. It's dangerous out there. It's not just the elites, it's just any multiple mobs. Everything is dangerous. That kobold mine you want to go into? Well, ideally you need to take a friend with you. Yes, you can do it alone, and that brings its own satisfaction, but it's so much noticeably easier when you group up with someone. The mechanics of the game encourage that level of interaction. And then with this is where the stories happen, the moments that you remember and you like to share with your friends. You know, that time you grouped up to kill Hogger, running past a random corpse and then resurrecting them because you can remember what it was like when you ran for your corpse, which was miles away. And these people you meet, you start to recognise the names because you're all on the same server. You're not spread out and sharded across several servers. It's very likely that you're going to encounter these people on your entire journey up to 60, and then you'll start to recognise the names, and that's how friendships are made, and that's how guilds are formed. And that's what I really love about Classic right now. That said, I still love Retail too. There's plenty of room in my heart for both. Retail is beautiful. I love flying around the world. I love the stories and the cinematics, how they are played out. I still have so many goals and achievements in Retail. My focus is obviously on professions, but within that there's plenty of mini goals for me to do and small achievements to make along the way. So I'm still very much motivated to play Retail. It's just that right now Classic is taking hold. The thing with Retail is you're very much more like a god or a hero as opposed to Classic where you're more like the soldier. And whilst there's a very risk of dying in Retail, it would seem more down to carelessness rather than an inherent danger in the world. Although that said, I do focus on gold making in Retail. If perhaps I did more of the dungeons and the Mythic Plus side of things, perhaps then I would find myself dying more often. Overall, they're both very different games. Retail has evolved over 15 years and has a huge history and story. Classic has gone back to basics. The world is smaller, and each of those steps of progression in Classic are significant. The items you pick up make a difference, the weapon speed, the stats, the choices you have to make. And I think that's what's capturing people at the moment with Classic, is all those significant parts of progress that allow you to make small goals and small achievements as you go and feel gradually more and more powerful. Could Retail learn something from Classic? Well, I think so. I think things like the proposed level squish we keep hearing about, I think might be a good thing to reduce the never-ending number of levels and that focus on just the last 10. But that said, with Retail, you're never going to be starting from fresh as you are with Classic, which is why they're two very different games, really, and they each have their own appeal for very different reasons. Personally, I plan to play both. Right now, Classic is capturing my imagination, my interest, so I'm playing that more than I am with Retail, but there's also a lot of the story that's evolving with Retail that I really want to get in, and I want to finish my war campaign. I want to see how that story is going to play out. I want to get more characters with professions so that I've got my gold making army there and I can work towards that gold cap, and I can use the gold that I make to pay for my sub, to pay for Warcraft 3 when it comes out, to pay for the next expansion when it comes out, to pay for the virtual ticket. So there's plenty and plenty of stuff to keep me motivated to play Retail as well as Classic. So I wouldn't go so far as to say one is better than the other, or you should play this or you should play that. It's entirely up to everyone to do what's fun for you. And for me, it's fun in both. So my plans for the rest of the month? Well, I'm going to carry on playing Classic. I'm going to keep on relisting things in retail. I'd really like to explore how the markets are developing in Classic and how I can make more and more gold. Obviously that's tied into how much time I can spend leveling. I'm only level 14 at the moment, so I've still got a long way to go on that. I think more like the average player is more like 40. So in that respect I am behind the curve, but I'll do what I can, and certainly gold making is going to be my focus, so I'll be releasing more videos about gold making in Classic as both the add-ons develop and how the markets develop, and looking out for and sharing any tips and tricks I can find for making gold. So watch this space, there's going to be plenty more videos coming up in the future. But right now, I hope you're all having plenty of fun in Azeroth, whichever one that is, whether old or new. I'd love to hear what your plans are, whether it's Classic or Retail, what you're going to do in the game, what you find fun. Leave a comment below. If you do have any questions or either, I'm always available either here on YouTube or on my Twitch channel or on Discord. All the links to those will be below. So until next time, happy gold making, and I'll see you very soon.